Welcome to the Look Good Move Well podcast.
We're doing it. We're officially
Oh,
in
good.
it. There's no kickoff to this
Okay,
thing.
Okay, good.
I think getting you and I together to discuss whatever comes out of this is just selfishly, it's a win. I'm just pumped. I haven't seen you, and it's been a couple months since you were up here. And why don't we start by just what have you been up to since I saw you?
No, I think that's perfect. I mean, so many podcasts, I feel like I'm just saying like the same script from past podcasts, you know what I mean? And I'm sure you feel the same way. But with me and you, to be honest, most of our followers, most of the people listening to this are probably like have already heard all our stuff. So I think if we go over like what are we working on right now, I think that's going to be the most productive. So I'm working on this, we text a ton, and I'm working on this advanced zero concept, which I used to think of the zero concept of like starting with the ankle and gradually working up the shin and then the knee as like something you would do to get out of pain.
Yeah.
But I love that process so much with body weight. And now with some of these things like the tibialis bar and this and that, it's kind of like, well, wait a second. I can actually add some loads to this. You know what I mean? I can add some equipment and loads and follow that same flow. But how to do that, with great recovery and stuff, I'm going really conservative. So my advanced zero, Monday, everything's loaded. And then Thursday, everything's body weight for high reps. It kind of keeps that. Some of us fragile people, we really thrive on those like high reps of really dominating positions. But then at the same time, the loaded stuff really bulletproofs. Like the loaded stuff is the stuff where you go and it's like, oh my God, I just played basketball and my knee doesn't hurt anymore. You know what I mean?
What's funny to me is that you just refer to yourself as a fragile person because you just like you still kind of identify yourself in that category, even though you're at where you're at today.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what's so crazy about it. Even to me, dude, like almost every time I'm working out or going to play basketball, last week going and dunking with, my wife there getting to throw me alley-oops and stuff. And it's just like, I can't believe like my knees don't hurt to do that. You know what I mean? So, so now I can do all this bulletproofing stuff, super easily, but it's still, I guess it hasn't worn off. It's still like, oh my God, like I can go dunk without even having to think about my knees. This is amazing.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's like one of the things that I see where we overlap in so many ways. But one of the things that we bring different to where we're at today is you come from a background, and I watch it in how you approach your training of like, what's the minimal effective dose? I know you love to move. I know you love to push yourself, but it's really minimal effective dose. You give yourself a lot of opportunity to recover. I think your total repetition volume and load volume every single week, as compared to what my background is, dramatically different. And we're achieving high levels of fitness. We have protocols and programs that can get people to great results. But I kind of want to unpack a little bit of like, how do you train just like 30 minutes a day, 4 days a week, and experience what you experience versus how do I train 90 minutes a day, 5 or 6 days a week, and I experience what I experience?
Yeah. And I think I think we have similar mindsets, but we're living different lives. So in your case, being a world-class CrossFitter, look at the amount of abilities you need there. You know what I mean? And then in my case, trying, even though it's just more mental, my own approach, but trying to be a world-class basketball player. So you have those different components where maybe if you rewinded to when you were playing soccer, you could imagine that I'm still living in that mindset. You know what I mean? And so, and I think that's why we've meshed so well, is because you're mastering all these different things that I don't even do. So even some of the stuff I do for you, it's like, oh, wow, I can weave this right into my warm up, or, you know what I mean?
Sure.
So it's basically you would kick my ass in so many ways, but I get to have all that energy and focus on the basketball. And even now it's just a Wednesday dunk session that I get to do. But it's like, I get to put so much intent into that, you know what I mean? Because of my training. But while I do like 30 minutes in general, that Monday loaded day is definitely closer to an hour long. You know what I mean? But then it's kind of nice because Wednesday I'm dunking. It's such an intense nervous system activity. And then I'm turning it around Thursday with a body weight leg session, which is amazing to like, you know what I mean? It just starts flooding things with recovery. So I think in your mindset, it would be like, okay, if I right now was going to try to train myself to become a pro soccer player, what would I do? You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah. And I think that what's interesting is while you resonate with a group of individuals out there in your program that are looking for sports performance, you also hit a huge population that's just looking to be out of pain. I'm also working with a audience that they don't have a sport per se. I would say the majority aren't trying to chase a sport. They want to feel better. They love to train. They're trying to get themselves up for training an hour a day or 90 minutes a day. That's what they want to get up for. But I would say probably if you took all the people that we've come in contact with coaching wise, not professional athletes, that was excluded. Most of them don't have a big nervous system event that they have to prepare for. Most people are not going and doing dunk sessions. Most people don't have a soccer match on the weekend. Most people are not trying to peak for a season. They're just day to day. So, it's like, I know what it feels like to be in your shoes and sort of reserve some of the nervous system energy so that you feel that spring.
Yep.
But on the flip side, to reserve in order to feel that pep in your step, to break up springy, to be able to dunk on Wednesdays, you got to pull back a little bit on training volume. And that doesn't jive with everybody, right? Some people are like, I want to do more. This is my hour today. I want to go and maximize it. Tomorrow doesn't matter.
That's your, that moment when you're doing your cardio or when you really get an Olympic lift, like with a nice snap or a heavy lift. That's my dunk. You know what I mean? So I'm doing sprinting, backward sprinting, lateral sprinting. So like I'm getting like intense cardio and intense, plyometric explosive activity. So yeah, I do think my populations are more like people training where like they don't give a crap about training. They care what it's gonna like. They have like a sport, and honestly, elderly people, because it's kind of the same for them. Like they just want to last. But yeah, so many people want to lift, and I think I used to always try to make programs to like cater to stuff that wasn't true to me. But now it's like, since we connected, you've seen I've been able to just be like, wow, like I don't have to worry about that. Like go train with Marcus and you know what I mean? Like, and it's actually better for me, even business wise, to be able to just stay in my lane and like exactly what I'm living. You know what I mean? It's just more, it's much more genuine for me. And honestly, it was once I got to train with you too. And it's like, I don't think I disagree with anything you do training wise. Like if we break down, like, what do you think about this or that? I feel like you're one of the few people I've ever talked to that it's like, I don't think we've had like a disagreement. You know what I mean? But we get to live these different lives.
Sure.
So it's freaking cool. And this is a phase of my life. I mean, who knows where I'll want to go with my body. You know what I mean? The muscle mass that you're able to develop in an athletic way, I don't know. I've never seen it. I mean, what are you working on right now? Like so knees over toes guy is trying to jump higher. You know what I mean? And I make these strategies really clear. I mean, that would be the basis of the strategy is Monday and Thursday. I'm going tibialis, straight leg calf raise, knee over toe calf raise, reverse step up, ATG split squat, optional squat with knee flexion, which loaded means like hamstring curl, body weight means like Nordic. And then finishing something like with the hip, like reverse Nordic or something like that. And then I'm picking it back up Tuesday and Friday with my hips, like piriformis, groin, hip flexor, single leg back extension, same thing, one day body weight. And I do the body weight day on Tuesday. So I'm like super primed for Wednesday to jump.
Yeah.
And I'm going from the hips, and then I'm gradually going up to the torso with things like pullovers and bridges and external rotation, following the same principles. Like I just shot a video, band or cable external rotation on Tuesday, short range, meaning like it's tough there, no load here, but then dumbbell on Friday where there's no load here, but all there. So I'm basically using these principles to flow from Monday to the end of Tuesday. I'm going from the ankle all the way up, to the upper body, even finishing with my neck. And then Wednesday, I'm like so primed to perform. And then I do the same thing Thursday, but diving in Thursday with just a body weight leg day. So I recover like crazy, but I'm getting high reps and I'm still getting stronger, like Nordics and stuff like that. So it kind of balances out nicely, the two different sessions, because like the hamstring curl is actually easier than a Nordic, but then like the loaded split squat is much tougher. But the high rep split squat, like with a slant board, you can get like an unbelievable pump, unbelievable healing from that jump session. And then Friday, getting into some loaded stuff like loaded single leg back extensions and stuff like that. Using the monkey foot to load the hip flexors on Friday. So then the weekend, it's like, boom, done, recover, turn around. I mean, that's my strategy. The zero concept, which I never thought I could apply weights to it, but realized, well, if I balance it, I could still recover. Because it's a lot of work to go from, I just named those 8 steps. It's a lot of work to go through in a session.
Yeah, your zero concept was really named appropriately because you didn't need equipment, but it could easily have been called the ground up concept. And then if a ground up concept exists, you can do it with no equipment or you can do it with equipment. And it just changes potentially like the nervous system, load and the potential for maximal or absolute strength gains.
And it wouldn't be good necessarily for the absolute strength, but it's really good for like pain-free performance. Like, meaning so many of us who are fragile, it's like, it's not about getting our squat up. It's like, we just want to squat without it hurting. You know what I mean?
Sure.
If we could do that, that would get it up more than trying to squat through pain. So it's almost like maybe for a CrossFitter, you might use that in like to start your off season or something, you know what I mean? To kind of like rebuild that off season, or maybe even closer to an event where you don't want to be like destroyed for the event. You know what I mean?
Completely. Yeah.
Or even as you do, like one of the things you do so well is you mix things up, but with strategy, you know what I mean? So like that could be used as a way to kind of just like mix things up. It changes the nature of the work capacity. You know what I mean? When you do it that way. So anyways, that was my whole backstory on like what I'm working on. That's what I'm doing. I mean, what are you going after right now? What are your goals? What are your strategies?
Yeah. I mean, I'll dive into that. And but I do want to say one more thing. And listening to you talk about your own pursuit of knowledge through the experiential process of training, like that's a thing I feel is probably the most in common characteristic that we share, is that I've always, I have an academic background in science and biology and physiology, but that isn't really where I've derived any of my training experience, knowledge, coaching knowledge. It's all through personal experience with training. And there are coaches out there that are much more book science knowledgeable than me. And, for periods of time in my career, that was like, I had insecurities about that. But ultimately I was like, well, I'm out here just eagerly and actively pursuing knowledge every day that I go into the gym. And that's why I train. That's why in periods of growth, I want to train 2 hours a day, not because I desperately need to train 2 hours to feel my best. Matter of fact, I oftentimes don't feel my best when I train that much, but I want to learn more. And if I want to go and learn zero, well, I'm not going to just look at a screenshot of it. I'm going to go do it. But I'm still going to go out and do my cardio. I'm still going to do my functional bodybuilding. I'm still going to do some of the other things that I'm doing. So we have just both you don't stay stagnant. I've known you for about 6, 7, 8 months now, and you are constantly digging into something new, just the same way as me, but there's always a thread of something consistent in there. And whether it's packaged as dense or as standards or as zero or as advanced zero, as, loaded zero, all of it has a common thread, but there's always something that you're pushing to learn. I'm going through my own similar process of that now, but I just thought it was important to really name that, because you present, when you educate through social media, Instagram, YouTube, you've clearly done your homework. You've researched all of the historical, evidence of other coaches. But my guess is that you experienced it first, and then you were like, oh, look who else did it. And that helped to kind of build a case for what you're doing. You didn't go out and be like, let me study these 10 people and then I'm going to go try it. It was like, no, you were just doing it. And then look, 10 other amazing coaches have been doing this too. And I'm putting it together in this way through my experience. Is that an accurate assessment of what you?
Yeah, exactly. And we share the same process. Like, you're trying to make breakthroughs. So, just to paraphrase, let's say that, some of the breakthroughs you've made is being able to balance muscle mass, but also being able to balance conditioning, mobility, these kind of things, right? To do a study on something like that, it would really take a long time to see the results accurately. You know what I mean? So here's a study that I've been telling people to try to get done that no one will touch. And that's just having people of different ages walk backwards 10 minutes 3 times a week for 2 years. that adds up to about 100 miles backwards. You're now digging through your toes. So it's amazing for your feet, your Achilles, your shins, your knees. And that's just walking. Like you don't even need like I did my 100 miles with a sled or a treadmill turned off. I did my 100 miles resisted, but with that intent, meaning like you could just stick your butt down, like lean back against the sled and not even really dig your toes and have your knee over your toes. You know what I mean? So I'm saying I did over 100 miles with intent resisted. But all I'm asking for is someone go do a study on thousands of people just on the walking aspect. But no one can do it because every person reaching out to me saying, oh my God, ATG changed my life. I'm in school. Now I have an opportunity to do a study. I tell them to do this. They come back. They say, my professor says I only have 8 weeks. Like,
yeah, no, it's horrible.
So, I mean, how would you like, for example, the idea of just building muscle mass without symmetry, without conditioning, without mobility.
Right.
Of course, you can test that in 8 weeks, but no one's training for 8 weeks. And all the people reaching out to us with all kinds of problems, surgeries, can't play with their kids, like major issues going on, total loss of motivation to train. You know what I mean? That occurred over years of getting out of balance. You know what I mean?
Precisely.
Years of neglect of certain areas. So even if it's like with the tibialis raise or something like that, like tibialis raise is not magic if you do it for 2 to 3 weeks. The idea is not like, oh, my shin hurts, do a tibialis raise to make the pain go away, even though some people report that. No, it's like you've been doing resistance training for 10 years, and now you wonder why when you jump off one foot, your shin and your ankle hurt, because you never trained your tibialis strength for the last 10 years. So what happens if you train that for 10 years? But no one's going to do those studies. But that's what I'm doing. That's what you're doing. And then we're making it so people online can do it. So it's like, I've already had thousands of people do this 2 years of backwards. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And you can see results from that. So I wouldn't even know where to start to get a quote unquote study made, but you can see some of the barriers there is that I just like living it, as you said. You know, I love being it and living it and trying to boil it down into something that I could explain to anyone, because that's my philosophy, is that truth is simple. So I think that it's like, if I can't explain it simply, then it's probably not true, you know, and it's probably not even worth studying in the first place. But you and I we're out here living it, paving the way so that people in academia can do accurate studies. But if we want to get long-term results, we're going to have to do some long-term studies. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I was in academia for years. You know, it was like, that was my undergraduate degree in molecular cell biology. I went to medical school for a little bit, and I wasn't turned off by it, but I was like, look, I feel like there's a lot more work that's getting done in this sector, in the health and fitness sector, because things can move really fast and rapidly. And I know that introduces problems, because people could say anything they want. And, you know, if you got a big enough following and you're charismatic and you maybe have the right, you know, look, people are going to believe you. But at the same time, I think if you come in with like great intentions, you can move the needle pretty fast in health and fitness. And I think that's what we're doing. And, you know, just to summarize, like, you know, listening to you, it's like every time I talk to you, I think in more simplistic terms. Like, what am I really doing? You're like, what are you up to right now? I'm like, well, I'm trying to answer the question that kind of got posed to me almost like 10 years ago when somebody told me about this concept of CrossFit. Okay. CrossFit resonated with me immediately, because I was like, I always wanted to do everything. I didn't need to be the best. I just wanted to be able to do it all. I wanted to be able to sprint. I wanted to be able to go long distance. I wanted to be able to ride my bike. I wanted to be able to have muscles. I wanted to be able to flex in the mirror and look amazing. I wanted to jump on a box, like, you know, and then once you started to show me that guys my age were doing muscle ups, I was like, I'm going to do that. You know, I want to do this. And so it's like, and then I went down the rabbit hole of CrossFit for years as a competitor. And, you know, the sport, as broad as the disciplines may seem, it gets very defined as like, you got to be good at these things. And you have to have a tremendous capacity in these things. To develop that level of capacity, you must train at an unsustainable rate. You know, it's going to be a defined career, right? Unless you're the genetic freak that can, you know, do 2 decades of CrossFit competitively as a master, whatever. I wasn't that genetic freak. I mean, I put in my work, but I had to balance a real life of family and work. So I was like, okay, how can I continue to pursue the dream of being this multidiscipline athlete who could do a lot of everything, but at the core of it looks like a bodybuilder and moves like a soccer player and can run like a middle distance or a distance runner. And that was when I started to say, okay, I have to peel back from the highest level of CrossFit competitive training, and I got to find the thing that allows me to do that. And that's where functional bodybuilding really was created out of. And that's what I continue to seek out. Because right now I'm like, okay, I have, what is the thing that's holding me back from living that for the next 30, 40 years? Like I literally am like, I'm going to be this 65-year-old dude that's down at the track with his barbell, cranking out cleans and running around the thing, and people are gonna be like, what the hell is this guy doing? Like
that's gonna change the world.
Ponytail.
I cannot.
Yeah. And
I'm
I wanted
so
to
freaking excited to see that.
So I do this, I push myself. I'm like, let me explore new concepts. And then I'm like, wait a minute, this is unsustainable. I'm not going to make it to 65 doing this. So how do I back it off? And what do I need to do to bulletproof myself some more so that I can make it longer? And it's just kind of like, I'm creating little mini seasons within my training year. I have these mesocycles of like, I'm in a flow where I'm pushing myself cardiovascularly, building my work capacity, trying to maintain muscle throughout that process. And then I pare back. And so that's where I am today is, this, when I met with you, I think I invested the early part of this year a lot into the ATG system and learning what I could from that to help me create a body that was going to last even longer. And then understand what are the principles that I just need to hold on to each week and get touches on each week to just maintain. And then now I'm in this process of like, well, it's been a while since I competed in the sport of CrossFit when my work capacity was at its highest. I love the feeling of cardiovascular fitness that can be applied to many disciplines. So I want to re-engage in that. We did some work capacity, workouts together when you had visited. And I was like, okay, I want to continue to push this. And I think that's what sets me apart is like, I'm the aerobic bodybuilder guy that has developed a lot of great training concepts around that I think people enjoy because that work capacity, your ability to do more in a short amount of time, probably equivalent to or next to being pain-free is the thing that adds most quality of life, adds to people's quality of life. When they can be pain-free, they feel amazing every day. When they can do more work in a certain amount of time, that's the energy, that's the spunk, that's the ability to last through a day and not get tired and wear out. And so
let me point out.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because some people are going to miss this. Is you're creating a body that feels great, that looks sensational. And we often think of looking sensational as something that requires feeling like shit and like dieting to the point that we're just like suffering. You know what I mean? Like I suffer to look this good. No, you're literally trying to feel incredible and yet looking absolutely shredded. You see what I mean? So I kind of wanted to point that out for anyone who's going to miss that, is there is still the side that like, yes, you can look phenomenal and feel like shit trying to get there. You know what I mean? And you're actually doing the opposite.
Yeah. And it's, that is also something that I have, because you experience tremendous pain, you learn how to feel amazing in your body and move the way you want to move. Because I tried to look my best and did the miserable approach, right? When I was in my early 20s and I dieted like crazy and I ate no calories and I was constantly obsessed with this image that, led to all kinds of mental health problems. I said, okay, my goal now is to solve that problem for myself first. Like, I don't want to be in that kind of discomfort and pain to just look a certain way. And then now it's, okay, let's continue to share that information with others and teach them, hey, you don't have to starve yourself to be lean, and you don't have to live in fear of, of calories. And then ultimately there's a combination between what you see in the mirror and how you feel inside that's going to give you your optimal confidence,
and
right?
365 days a year, because it's one thing to bulk up and look like crap most of the year and feel like crap, you know what I mean? And then feel like, first you feel like crap, because of how, bloated and loss of leanness. And then you feel like crap because of the opposite, you know what I mean? And not eating enough. And my diet now, I could explain, I mean, in 3 words: meat, fruit, avocados. And I used to really limit fruit because it's like carbs, calories, you know what I mean? And then I used to limit, how much avocados, they're very high in calories, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Except every time I try to be super shredded, I would not have, and everyone's different, right? Like my muscle mass is going to be different in the years. I'm not saying I look that great, but even for me, my muscle mass would kind of be limper, you know what I mean? To have that shredded look. But then if I try to be having my muscles feeling more popping, then I would lose the leanness. So now this year is the first time in my life there's no cravings. So I haven't had a cheat meal all year, which I have nothing against cheat meals, but for me, this is a big deal to get over the cravings because I'm trying to feel great, be happy 365, you know what I mean? And so understanding the calories differently. So now I think of every food, I think of what energy is this food going to give my body? How survival is this food versus, how low in calories can I get? Because then I'm just going to be craving those nutrients somewhere else. You know what I mean? So it's such a mental shift for me this year on how I think about calories, that now I look for what's the highest calorie foods that have a lot of nutrition, that are natural. And then I center my diet around those. And now body fat is just gone. Muscles are bigger than they were when I was lean before. So I think that's absolutely massive as well, what you're doing for people understanding diet and understanding, like these are the traditional ways we think about it. We think that you have to feel like shit, that you have to suffer with your diet to look the way that you look. You know what I mean? Right. And yet you're doing the opposite.
Yeah, it's and I did a couple YouTube episodes on this that got a lot of attention, but it was like move more, eat more, feel better. Kind of essentially it's if you're going to eat less to diet, that's fine. And it's going to work for a period of time. And that's what most people need to do. They need to get into some type of calorie deficit. But what people
is easy when you can move well. So like when you can move well, it's so easy. And
it's easier when your baseline is up here. If you're already kind of starving yourself and then you want to diet even further, it's a miserable process. And but ultimately, if you undernourish or you don't, you cut calories, then eventually your body's going to learn that there's something wrong and that you're in a deficit. And it's not going to change your metabolism. Like people worry like, oh, my metabolism just shut off. It's like, no, that's not what happened. But your motivation goes down. Your energy to train, your energy to move goes down. Like all of these things go down.
Sleep quality.
Yeah. Like everything. And hungry, it's all the goal
I
is
can't sleep when I'm hungry. I can't sleep when I'm hungry. And then when I wake up and I didn't have sleep, I don't feel that testosterone. I don't want to train. You know what I mean? So, and it's the quality of the food, because I'm telling you, I just talked to so many people, and the overwhelming majority, meaning I literally haven't found one to the contrary, is they have an opposite understanding of calories and they're trying to avoid calories. But guess what they're eating? They're eating crap. Like they're eating crap all the time because they lose their diet. And then they have that mental letdown that they couldn't withstand the cravings and they broke. And this is something that our ancestors were not faced with. Our ancestors weren't faced with all these crap foods around us that are also super cheap and super fast. There's almost like a relative, like how fast, how cheap the calorie is, the worse it is for you.
Oh, and you forgot the one other thing. It's that they're cheap, fast, and they're genetically and chemically, engineered to taste amazing. I mean, these things taste freaking amazing. And that is what makes it so, like, I always said to people, like, when you eat foods that are not, let's call it Paleolithic or ancestral or whatever, you can't trust anything about your brain chemistry when you're eating these things. You don't trust your appetite control, your satiety. There's no cues that you can really trust. And ultimately, when you've primed your palate to only really understand these hyperpalatable foods, eventually, even if you're like really good willpower and you restrict your calories for 5 days, 6 days a week, the 7th day will come. Your body is your willpower will not survive this. Physiology will win. Biology is going to win. It's going to send you out looking for calories. You're going to go reach for the hyperpalatable food that are energy dense, and you're going to way overshoot your caloric needs. And ultimately, people just can't successfully diet that way. So, it's this combination of like,
And those foods aren't as good on the immune system.
no,
So like,
no, you're completely inflamed. Your digestive health is suffering. Your gut is totally damaged, which is going to just send your immune system into a total funk. You can't recover for training. You can't sleep well. You're more susceptible to infections. It's a real problem. And when you talked about like, hey, meat, fruit, avocado, this is real food. I would challenge you on that amount of food or those food groups with your desire to move, because it's ingrained in you to move. I challenge you to go and get fat just eating those things. I honestly, I don't believe you could do it, because inside of those food groups is your biology, is your ancestors, is your genes, and that's going to only inspire you to go move more. If you went 1,500 calories into a surplus every day for the next month, my guess is you would just end up moving more, training more, and just getting more
sleeping
jacked.
longer.
And you would just, and it would balance out, and you maybe gain a pound
of muscle.
Yeah, right.
And like lose body fat. No, and that's essentially, that's the challenge I took. Like it was a total, I remember, texting you at night, like freaking out, like that I had just been totally misduplicating calories. You know what I mean? and since that point, honestly, life has been so much better, because that's how I'm living. I'm living the challenge myself to get fat by eating what I want to eat within those natural food groups. You know what I mean? And so that's the kind of long-term study we need. Again, it's a short-term versus long-term thing. You know what I mean? Like that kind of a thing. If you just wanted to lose the most weight in 8 weeks, of course, it would be a totally different plan. But then where would that person be 8 years from now? You know what I mean? And I just see people struggling. I see people who are doing great 4 years ago on low-calorie approaches, and now they're fatter than I've ever seen them. No offense. It's not, you know what I mean? But it's just like, and I'm not even saying that everyone has to have the same body type, but I'm saying that these are people who themselves are upset. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they were trying to follow a diet. You know what I mean? So I think it was actually a guy, someone told me it was a quote, Greg Doucette, who I saw commented on your diet video, and he had a quote, I guess, that was kind of something along the lines of the best diet is the one that you can follow the rest of your life. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah.
So again, are you or I talking about what the CrossFitter should do, or what the bodybuilder should do to get? No, we're not. We're talking about like average people. We're talking about most of us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And even then, I think it still gives you a pretty dang good framework. Same, you know what I mean, for the longevity of a career, because like, how good can you get at CrossFit in a year? It takes years to develop. You know what I mean? So if you're still centering your food around as many of these real foods as possible, I still feel like you're going to get farther.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I wanted to actually come back to, talking about like, how does going through like a current phase of training, like you're going through, like and I mean that by like, you're investigating something by doing it. Where do you see, what's the process by which your lessons that you're learning get funneled and filtered down to the member of your program or the person that's following? Like, how is what you're learning getting translated into education? Is it like same day, like, oh my God, I just learned something, I gotta make a video for it? Or this is my process for making sure that I really test this understanding and assumption and people get to try it?
It's a mix of both, because I'd already been training for so many years and training so many people in person. So if you talk to the same me 3 years ago, I hated social media. I wanted nothing to do with social media. I thought I would never have an online course. I remember like I had a gym, and like I remember someone offering to like buy it or whatever, and I was like, I'll never, stop doing this. You know what I mean? I thought I would just stay in my hometown, run my gym, never go online, hated social media. You know what I mean? But it really just kept growing, that it was like, people were so trained to think to never let your knees over your toes. You know what I mean? So it gradually turned into more of a duty where I was like, this is my duty to just bust this myth, you know? Like if I lived and died and that's the only thing I ever got done professionally, I'd be very happy with that. You know what I mean? So I made a joke, like I hated social media. So I made a joke name, knees over toes guy. You know what I mean? And now my life is completely different. But it's allowed me to help so many more people than if I was only in person. So it's kind of like I started with what already was working. I had hundreds of in-person success stories already. You see what I mean? Before I ever went online. And that started in college. And I actually wanted to mention this when we were talking about the academia stuff earlier, because everyone probably has their own story. And in my case, I finished high school, no basketball recruitment. 2 years later, had more diagnosed tears in my knee. Like I only got worse for like the next 2 years of no knees over toes. The idea of no knees over toes, and I had already destroyed my body as a kid by overtraining so hard, never letting my knees over my toes. I had no ability with my knees over my toes. Basketball is hardcore knees over toes. So someone like Michael Jordan, he had like well-developed VMOs. He didn't even start playing basketball until I had chronic patellar tendonitis by the time I was 12. He didn't even start playing basketball till he was like 12. You know what I mean? Some of the best players were actually multi-sport athletes. They didn't start playing till later. Kobe Bryant didn't do the American system where you just destroy yourself year round. So I was already pretty broken down. No recruitment for basketball, had never grabbed the rim. Around that time, I saw this quote. I was 20 years old from Charles Poliquin that said, "The athlete whose knee can go farthest and strongest over his toes has the most protected knees." And so that just shifted everything. And because I knew immediately it was true, because I had just lived the life of no knees over toes. I just lived 3 different surgical alterations, more diagnosed tears, failing to be able to play basketball. So I dove down all that. I studied all his disciples. I found videos of Keegan Smith, Australian strength coach, who now, along with you, is just one of my absolute best friends in the world in training. And he now is the one who certifies people in this system, because that's what he does. He specializes in coaching coaches. So I then spent years figuring this out. At 23 years old, I got a Division I full ride basketball scholarship. Now, you went to high school, you played sports. Like, have you ever met anyone who got their first D1 offer at 23? Like, it doesn't happen. I brought myself back from the dead with knees over toes training. Now check this out. I get to the school, Boston University, and the strength coach is 100% never going to allow me to do knees over toes training. That literally got me the scholarship to your school. And now I can't do knees over toes training. So if you want to know why I'm against academia, it's because if he was never indoctrinated, if he was just indoctrinated at observe a human body move, now improve that, you know what I mean? Work on it, fix its weak points. He would have been better than if he never was brought up in academia. So the NCAA denied my eligibility. They said I was too old. I was already like 5 years out of high school. It never even occurred to me, because no one's even getting recruited that late. It didn't occur to anyone, myself, my coaches, the coach at Boston. It didn't occur to anyone that I would be too old. You never hear of this. No one gets their first D1 offer at 23. It doesn't happen.
Right.
So Boston was positive, because of my medical records, that if I got a lawyer, that I could have fought the decision. But I immediately knew right then and there, I don't want to now go the next 2 years and not be able to put my knees over my toes. So I immediately started training people. So I already had all that experience with myself. Then I started training people. I never charged enough to really make a profit. I was just like, I felt too bad for people. Like, anyone who came in, I was going to figure out a price that they could afford, even if it was like $50 a month to personally train them 5 days a week. You know, it's insane. I came up with this style of like expert coaching, where you come in anytime you want during the day. I worked 7 days a week for 7 years. I took one, like on my wedding day. At this point, I was starting to work online. My wedding day, I took off. But I mean, every other day on my honeymoon, I was writing articles. And by this point, I had started shifting online. Anyways, that's what brought me to now. So now if I'm making a change, it's kind of like you said earlier, there's still so many common denominators. It's not like a wild new idea. It's something very minor that makes it flow better. You know what I mean? That's about it. And I keep living these programs. So I always had a love of like the body weight thing to get the healing going. But then I also had a love of like measurable targets. I'm like obsessive about measures of angles
Sure.
on mobility and strength. And then it was Keegan who came up with the idea in between the zero and in between the standards. Those existed before dense. And dense just means doing a certain amount of sets in a certain amount of time. So it's not like you're just going from body weight to seeing how much weight can I lift. It's like you're going from body weight to now like, okay, now with 10 pounds, could I do that 10 reps, 10 sets in 10 minutes? Like that kind of you're slowly dominating weights. So I then lived through all that the last year, and now coming back around to zero is kind of like, well, I love the zero, but I don't want to lose my tools. I don't want to lose my weights. You know what I mean? And so this is what I do. I live at least like 12 weeks on these different phases. So I'm back around making advanced zero, and it's combining really a lot of zero, dense, and standards. But to be safe, that's why I'm doing now, instead of 5 training days a week, 4, leaving Wednesday off because it's now a little bit more challenging. Mm-hmm. And I've got that Monday loaded day and the Thursday body weight day to create kind of a balance. And it's also advanced zero because like I'm about to go on like a road trip for my wife's like 10-year school reunion or whatever. And it's like, I can just do the body weight options. You know what I mean? So it's kind of nice. Yeah. It's like, I don't have to just like let myself go or skip my workouts. You know what I mean? I can just do the body weight version and still keep training. So, yeah, so there you go. I mean, that was your question, was kind of like, how do I put in changes is lived it with myself for years, then lived it with others for years, then went online and now continue to live it. And so I'm just never going to escape. Whenever I feel like advanced zero is just completely done down to the most minor little details. Like today I mentioned today I was filming that on Tuesday. It's working the external rotators in the short range for high reps, like 25 reps for that blood. And then on Fridays, working with the dumbbell through the long range for only 5 reps per set, like nice and slow down. So you got the bulletproofing, you got the healing. That's like a super minor change, trying to perfect that program. When I feel like I can't perfect it anymore, then I'll probably go on to an advanced dense.
Interesting. That's
long ass answer.
No, it's a great answer. And it does bring me to another question, which comes up for me is, when you were visiting here, there was something that, and in all the conversations we had leading up to our meeting, like getting to meet each other in person, doing some, functional bodybuilding together, there was something that you took away from the time that we had. And I'd just like to hear, like, what did it open up to you to like experience some of the ways that I had put together some workouts and what your actual feelings were? Because how I experienced my own training. Yeah, I just want to, if you wouldn't mind, to share what that was like.
It's so precise. Last year, went through zero, then went through dense, then in spring went through standards. Then I spent months trying to work on what I thought I needed as a 4th layer, like an advanced layer. And remember, I'd be messaging you about thinking that I needed to add in Olympic lifts and compound lifts. And I was you saw a lot of my experiments with like, how do I do ATG style compound lifts? And so honestly, I wasted a lot of months with that because you're fucking nailing it. So it's like, so once I got to go train with you, and then there was kind of like gradually where it was just like, you're the perfect person to just do all that. You know what I mean? I don't have to create the 4th layer because among other things, you are the 4th layer. You know what I mean? You're able to integrate. How do you focus on muscle mass, more high levels of cardio, Olympic lifting, compound lifting, all this stuff. And you just picked up the ATG system and were able to weave it in. And I want to keep doing my dunk sessions, and I don't want to save energy for the Olympic lifts. And it was really, I mean, you saw, I went through months of, I really gave it my best shot to figure out ATG style muscle programs, ATG style compound lifting, and this kind of stuff. And I'm so much happier that I just get to stay in my zone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're crushing it, but you're the first person that came along that was like, okay, now I don't have to do this. People want that, and you're crushing that, and I get to just stay in my lane. And now I'm fired up because I figured out like, you know, how to use the slant board backwards to really get into that big toe or whatever on advanced zero, you know, like I get to stay, like, I want to just stay on this stuff. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And I want to stay on this stuff and, you know, experience that anti-gravity effect of like, you know, how old could I be and still dunk? Like, I want to break that world record. You know what I mean? For like someone my height.
Yeah.
What's the oldest someone has been my height and dunked? I want to break that world record, but you're going to break world records as that 6-year-old badass dude in so many other ways. You know what I mean? And
Sure.
it's just, I feel like it's better just doing it like a team like that with like-minded people rather than trying to do everything and then not being able to really live. You know what I mean? Like being able to really live your truest passion. So that's what you're doing. You're living your truest passion. I'm living mine. And I did have one quote that came up while you were breaking down some of what you're working on. And I feel like what you've done is you've taken the burden of CrossFit that we all loved. I've gone and done CrossFit workouts even. And you've taken the burden of what we all loved, but it was a quote I just saw yesterday. And it was along the lines of, when the measurement starts to become something that you're challenging rather than just using it as a measurement, it no longer serves as the best measurement. Does that make sense? So it's kind of like in CrossFit, you have all these measurables, but they do turn a bit into skills of mastering that rather than just like doing the Olympic lift for the explosive power. You know what I mean? Like there's versus turning. So you're like taking that burden of CrossFit, but not letting the competition construe with the original intention of it. You know what I mean? The original intention.
I think that was where my career started to really, I saw it come to an end, was when the measurements that you talk about, you know, if you're in the sport, you really believe, and you have to believe that you're on this continual upward trajectory. It's like the measurements, you just got to keep breaking them. That is the challenge, is to get better. And then those measurements, when put into the competition setting, you know, ideally pay off as a better placement. But we're not the same person at every step of the way. And you're measuring yourself against just measurements, not against the person who hit that measurement on that day at that point in your life. And while I'm evolving as a person, I went from being a competitor when I first started, that was single, living with his parents, working as a coach, and in his mid to early 20s, who finished his career as a married, baby on the way, owns a house, owns a business, has 8 employees, you know, like those are different people, but I was still having to beat every single metric from all of the years. And that became such a burden and such an emotional and mental obstacle. And I didn't have.
And how much can you squat with knee sleeves on? How much can you squat with knee sleeves on versus how much can you squat without knee sleeves with unbelievable positioning and with it feeling great? So it's kind of that. Like when
the intention was. I'm so glad you're saying this, because I haven't been able to articulate it. You know, I got
to find this quote for you.
Yeah. Well, it's like, I'm out there in my training sessions, and I have, in the last 2 years, I would say, I've really relieved myself of the burden of having to measure up compared to how I used to be. And I can go out and I can do an ATG split squat, and I can just feel, I'm like, dude, I'm in a rock solid position. I got 50-pound dumbbells in my hands. It doesn't matter that they're not 100, you know, it's the intention behind what we're trying to accomplish, that I know if we hit that right, we're going to be able to do this for a long, long time. And that's what I teach our athletes. And that's what I try to message is, what is the intention of this? So many people are misguided in what the intention needs to be when they go into their training session, because they've watched thousands of Instagram videos of people hitting PRs and slamming barbells. And it's like, that's a byproduct of doing the right thing enough times. You don't go and chase that. You go into the gym and you want to feel it this way. And you know that that's a hard thing to articulate in remote coaching and online settings, is like, oh, I'm not with you. How do we teach our people to understand deeply and ingrain what we've learned from decades of doing it? Like, this is how it's supposed to feel. Yep, I'm hitting it right today.
And you don't know what that lifter felt like. You don't know how many painkillers they had to take before that session.
Hell no. Yeah. I mean,
and you don't know what they feel like, you don't know what their cardio would be like. You don't know what their, so, and even when you've tested certain things recently, you and I will kind of be like, wow, like the positioning's amazing. And you're actually like pretty fucking strong for not doing competition style. So it's like,
sure.
like, I don't think it means getting weak. I think it means having more pain-free strength. You know what I mean? Having more functional strength. You know what I mean? Like
Sure.
there is a difference. Like if you add range of motion in a squat, that is not necessarily going to increase your squat, but it would increase your ability to do things in real life. It would increase your joint health and things like this. Like I see sometimes PRs and I'm just like, the guy looks like he's a mummy. He's so wrapped up. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then
right.
the depth is so bad. Like he wouldn't even be able to, like, he may have hit an unbelievable weight, but not be able to like get down and play with his kids. You know,
and there's nothing, and
there's
nothing wrong with that. The part that becomes problematic is
that's
a sport. Exactly. It's when the people that we're talking to, your average person, thinks that's what I do to get the feeling that I want. And the feeling that they want is more daily functionality, feeling good, energetic, having athleticism, but they're misplacing that with this. And it's the same thing with the diet conversation that we had. It's like, that person looks shredded. If I follow that, I'm going to feel the same way. It's like, no, you're going to maybe look similar, but you're going to feel like crap. This is another approach to feeling good and having a body that you feel confident in. This is another way of training that's going to make you feel amazing. Your back squat number will not be great. Like I cannot squat 455 pounds anymore. It doesn't matter what the depth is. Like I don't have that in me anymore. I used to, but guess what? Like I squatted 315 for 5 the other day and really good depth. And that's great. Like I don't, I feel better.
And to most people and to a fragile person, that would be life-changing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when you figure out things along this nature of really giving people increased pain-free ability, even if you now could actually train a power lifter or an Olympic weightlifter, and you would have some gems for them that would help them even lift more weight. You know what I mean? So I'm skinny knees over toes guy, but one of my proudest things was helping a power lifter who was stuck at 875 on his squat with chronic knee pain, fix the knee pain and squat 1,006 pounds. I don't squat 1,006 pounds, but I know how to help a guy who's stuck at 875, but I didn't tell him to stop. I didn't tell him to stop doing his sport. You know what I mean?
No.
It was just it was really a matter of plugging in the ATG split squat and some of the tibialis work to get the blood flow. You know what I mean? And then it just gave that boost. So yeah. And I mean, a perfect example is like, I've never made a video that says, here's how you fix your knee pain. Dunk session. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
that's an extreme, like the dunk session is an extreme activity. I'm not advising my mom to go do dunk sessions. You know what I mean?
Totally.
So me and my mom can follow the same programs, but I'm not having her do a dunk session. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that was like, I feel like you needed that, like, for anyone who's confused on that, like that justification to understand that, like, when the measurable stops being what it was originally intended to measure and becomes more of a competition in itself, it's no longer the best measurable for that. You know what I mean? So,
and I think you said it, I forget how you worded it, but
I don't remember.
It is.
I tried to find the quote on my phone.
No, but you something else you said. And again, like I'm a huge proponent of this, the CrossFit as a sport. I was embedded in the methodology for years. I love the community. And one of the things that you said, which resonates with me, is that because of how that brand was built on a series of metrics that everybody must, can use to help elevate their fitness and their quality of life, there's a lifespan to that, where if you get too caught up in the culture of just trying to beat the scores, then it becomes something where it's like, well, is this even really working for you anymore? Is this helping you achieve what you want out of it? Because you're not playing the sport. You're actually trying to use the sport principles to help your life. And I saw many people, including myself, get too caught up in the sport and too caught up in the measurements for it to really improve their life. And even today, I still have to battle that with some of my members is, hey, is this going to, like, I don't see us doing the traditional lifts as much on a consistent basis because I want to get my back squat numbers up. And I'm like, I don't go and challenge them. I just wonder, I'm like, well, why are we trying to get the back squat number up? Like, why is that? Like, and I know, because I know they're not competing in powerlifting. I'm like, why is that the thing that's so important? Because I could tell you that my best back squat were not my best knees and my best hips ever, and so, and
But I think
that's
that's
what
where
we just
you're
broke down.
nailing it. Is you're still we crave challenge. You know what I
Of
mean?
course,
So
yes.
I think that's where you're nailing is. Then you're still giving people this opportunity to
Right.
be challenged.
Well,
and that
that's
was what I had told you. Is like you figured out, how do I go challenge myself, but in a way that's money in the bank for my body, not
exactly.
just taking away from the, like the way you're training, you're gonna, like, as you age, you're gonna be the best CrossFitter of all time, if that makes sense.
I could see how that could happen. It would require, like we've discussed, decades of doing it. But
I'm going to be
right.
the best jumper of all time
Exactly.
at age 60. Like, but that's
I would have to go out. I need to
go.
go out and compete in a CrossFit event in order to actually make that claim. So that might not happen. But you can go out and dunk forever. But what you just said was,
if you're 60, you could just show up to an event.
I've kind of put that in the back burner. Is like, I might just roll out of retirement in the 60 plus category in 24 years.
And that's what I'm doing for my kid, because like, I want to be able to raise my kid so hands-on. Like, that is the natural ways that we show our kids the way of life. You know what I mean? And I know he's going to want to play sports and stuff. And I know that I'm going to subliminally put so many basketballs around. He's going to want to play basketball,
Yeah.
Basically, I think it's so cool. That's a joke. I'm not going to like force him to play anything, but I think it'd be so
15
cool.
basketball hoops in your driveway.
Yeah. He's like, there's other sports than basketball. Like, I thought that was the only. So we're already on the road. We have no TV in the house. He's not going to know that there's no basketball, but that's kind of my closing statement, is like, I've come to realize that I get more happiness out of helping other people. And I'm going to get more happiness out of getting to dunk with my kid, go to the track and sprint with my kid when he's 15, 16, 17, 18, than any joy I had myself, than any competition I would ever have myself. I'm going to experience more joy by getting to experience that with him. You know what I mean?
That's huge.
And that's the fact. So I am personally driven and chasing the ultimate competition. It's just, for me, I've come to realize that that's what that's going to be for me. You know what I mean? So I haven't lost that drive to compete. I haven't lost that ego, that fire. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I've just come to realize that I just genuinely believe that humans are wired that way. I genuinely believe that it's like this awesome way that humans were created, that we get more joy out of helping others than ourselves. You know what I mean? And that makes it so that we can flourish. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because imagine if we didn't have that. You know what I mean? Like, why would we, you know what I mean? Like, I that's just what I believe. And it doesn't mean that everyone sees that and that everyone is living that way. But I actually think we're all wired that way. I even think that the most egocentric person who, for whatever reason, is living that way, I think would be happier if they wound up, helping other people, So that's where it's at. I am training for the competition, and that's kind of my, that's the moment that I'm every rep, every set that I'm holding my form a certain way. Even the fact that I do a dunk session every other week rather than every week, it's just kind of like a smart investment of like, I think once every 14 days is still enough to be honing these skills, you know what I mean? And having fun doing it without overdoing it. I don't think I have to do it more often than that. And that's what I'm finding. I'm jumping the highest of my life, and I'm only jumping once every 14 days. So, so I'm preparing, for that competition, if you will.
I love it. Well, a couple of things, because we're just coming up on an hour, and I want to make sure you be respectful of your time. But I really think that you have opened my eyes to a way of understanding how we can rebuild ourselves from even the most fragile state to incredible performance levels. And I think something that you mentioned is that when people arrive at this place of like, they start to feel better, they start to see results, they start to experience performance improvements, that many of us are hardwired to want to challenge ourselves even more. It's like, okay, I made it this far. What else can I do? What else can I do? And in the world of fitness and with the tools and the methods that are out there, especially with the development of things like CrossFit and so forth, there's a limit, almost limitless potential of how much you can go and punish your body, put the hurt on it. And so in an effort to challenge oneself, I think people, fall victim to following the shiny lights that are out there. And so I think that's also part of what we're doing together. What you're doing, what I'm doing is create sustainable ways to continue to challenge yourself and get people to change their perception of what challenge means. Does it mean back squatting 400 pounds or 300 pounds, or does it mean move well for years to come, explore new ranges, right? Like you're not done running.
And have some of the most epic workouts of your life,
Yeah, that just feel amazing.
I see that on my workouts, and I see that on your workouts. I see people like saying that is like literally like one of the most epic sessions they ever had. You know what I mean? So it's like,
yes,
we're not saying not to challenge, but to do that in a way that's money in the bank for the long term. And not that everyone has to have kids, but it's a bit of a different responsibility of like I'm putting the kind of parent I can be above of, what I could do myself, Yeah. And life has its different phases. There's no rush into that. But I feel like once you're a parent, I feel like it's a different level of responsibility,
Sure. Well, do you want to give a little plug for anything that you want people to hear on this podcast, where you want to send people? And
I mean, where to find both of our programs. I think it's cool that you're living your program and I'm living mine. And these are things, that people can afford because of the nature of online. It would be a different world if it didn't exist, that there were apps that people could look and see what we're doing,
Yeah.
So I just think it's so freaking cool that people can train how we're training, the value of that, like in person, would be so astronomical, but because of online, because of the world, it's like so accessible for people. And that's what I do. And I see that's what you do. And that's what I do. It's like, I try to create like what I wish had existed. Like I would have I would have killed to be able to train like this, you know what I mean? And follow along with what I was doing. So I think it's pretty cool. We're creating this businesses, and you've made an impact on ATG forever in many ways, from diet to even helping align my purpose with training, because we share so many similar ideals. And then even down to saving me from a rabbit hole of trying to live a life that wasn't as true to me. And that way I can just stay focused on certain things that I'm staying focused on. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's really, some things I think were meant to be. And I think this was one of them. And how crazy that for anyone listening to this, before I even knew, I was following Marcus, before I'd ever spoken to him or knew where he lived, I had already booked a house like minutes from him to go, for my kids and my wife's, for my kid to be able to meet my wife's family and my parents. And I'm from the San Jose area. And so I booked like a cool place outside of San Francisco. That was literally like 10 minutes from Marcus's gym. And I remember when me and Marcus was like, damn, I wish I was going to San Diego for something so I could train with you or whatever. And you're like, San Diego. Like,
no, I'm up here, baby. Yeah, that was, I remember that week. I remember that week when we were
messaging. That was my only trip. In the last year.
I know.
I remember year and a half. That's the only.
That was crazy.
What the hell?
The week that we were texting that week, I remember it being just like this series of synchronicities and just like things that I just couldn't explain. I was like on this total high, and I remember like talking to my wife about it, and she was like, "Oh my God, you have like, it's so cute. You're getting so excited about this thing, and that's like happening in your life." And I was like, it was a really wild experience to connect with you, and then to have so many things overlap timing wise, which ultimately led to us meeting and us coming together at the gym, you challenging me to put together some workouts that have now become, an ebook that we're selling, which is we call it Beyond Knee Pain, athletic muscle, functional bodybuilding. And if anybody's listening to this that's in your, universe, I encourage them to go pick it up, because it really brings together FBB methods. It brings together movements that are so foundational to the ATG system. You had a big hand in, helping these workouts come to light. And we've already had, thousands of people grab it and experience results from it, and they're doing it. So that'll get linked in whatever descriptions or show notes we have. And
So freaking cool.
just a cool way to kind of see our worlds coming together. So thanks for your part and all of that. And of course, the impact that you've had on me, in this short time knowing you, and I'm sure for years to come.
Well, I'm stoked. Thanks to anyone who's listened this far. Let me know when this is up. Not as offense to any other podcast, but I just think this one's so impactful. You know what I mean? I wish I would have heard this conversation a long time ago. So I can't wait to help other people have some of these aha moments.
Awesome. And then I'll be catching you hopefully in October here pretty soon when you come up and visit again.
That's going to be wild, man. Sacramento, Mark Bell's gym, public free event. Marcus and I will be there, literally setting up like the workout, like the lower body longevity workout of a lifetime, guaranteed, or your money back. It is a free event, so you don't get $0.
I can't wait to see it all go down. This is going to be epic.
It's going to be crazy.
Well,
I'll post that all over my social media. I think it's October 23 and 24 that weekend. I want to say it's Sunday. Sunday is the public event, so it's going to be epic.
Well, thanks again for jumping on this call with me, and enjoy your road trip coming up.
Yeah. Thanks, bro.